So the first thing is just provide an overview of what's the current landscape of cellular therapies in orthopedics, where it's a dynamic field, right? And we are currently in a very dynamic environment. I think this plays basically two parts. One, we still have a window and a gap of opportunity within the treatment of certain disease. That means that there are certain stages of many musculoskeletal conditions that we still don't have an effective and reliable treatment for. That opens the window for the development of new therapies. And I think that that's where cellular therapies hold both promise and a lot of potential, right? So it's in that crosslink of the gap of opportunity and this new and novel treatment. The key evidence-based procedures currently being used in clinical practice, well, we can narrow it down to certain conditions, right? I think within orthopedics, there have been a lot of developments within the treatment of avascular necrosis or osteonecrosis. Cellular therapies have been increasingly being used for the treatment of this condition. I think that that's on one end. Then we also have osteoarthritis, which is one of the main disease that we try to treat at the earlier stages. And there has been a lot of development around that with a little bit more controversial findings. But if we have to say, what are the key avenues of research that are going to be required for the translation of these new therapies into practice? It's probably going to be, and it's going to rely within large prospective cohorts and large registries that are able to combine both the patient's outcomes and the biospecimen, that means the characterization of the cell therapy, and the linking of those two to try to assess in which cases it works, in which one it doesn't, and trying to link both patient, disease, and treatment, and tailoring the indication and separating the wheat from the grass, really understanding what works and what doesn't. The impact, that this might have, it's enormous, right? And the reason for that is that, as I was just telling, the gap, it's really big. Why? Because we still don't have effective treatments, right? So if we were to develop or to find that any of these new cellular therapies or orthobiologics is both safe and effective, and of course we have to prove that it's cost efficient, then that would allow it to actually serve a very good mission, right? The challenge is that clinical registries are a big challenge, and they remain for several reasons, right? Financially, they require a large investment, both in personnel, time, logistics, and there's a lot of work to be done on that side. So the impact is probably that these therapies and these registries will have, they're going to be dependent on the quality and the magnitude of these clinical registries. I think that there are a lot of groups and societies and different teams working around finding answers. And in the coming 2 to 5 years, I think we're going to see some very interesting data coming out of these clinical registries. And I think that if you ask me what's the distinctive feature that they will provide in the ones that are coming, is that I think we're going to be able to finally link the clinical outcomes, that's the patient response, so the patient perspective and how the patient did, if he improved or not, with the biospecimen. So far, out of our research and many of our colleagues, if we go into published data, every time we say that an orthobiologic is clinically effective or provided some benefit, the challenge is that in less than 25% or less than 30% of those, there is an analysis of the therapy that was implemented or used at the point of care or else. That brings the challenge of reproducibility, because you don't only need to prove that they're efficient, but you need to prove that you can replicate it, and some other team will use the same treatment for similar patients in a different setting, and they'll obtain a similar outcome. The combination of the biospecimen, the clinical registry, and linking that moving forward is probably going to be the distinctive feature. It's what holds the largest promise and potentially the highest impact in the coming years.